You've just recreated the worst possible nightmare.
Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing.
You'd think with 2 mortgages out, the repo guy's staking out my car, my job on the line.
Even when we win, it's just a matter of time before we give it all back.
There are serious financial management problems.
Are we potentially at a point where we might actually lose the financial system as we know it?
And you're standing there and you suddenly realize, hey, I'm still here.
Don't be a victim of the current economic crisis. Turn the tables on the banksters, collection agencies, and other crooks. You can stress out trying to find a way to make the minimum payments every month, or you can get them to pay you. Join hosts Jesse and Dave every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for What Lies in Your Debt, right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Where information never sleeps.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Joe Kiernan. Thank you for joining us tonight on Researchers on a Mission Radio. Tonight we're going to be joined by a gentleman by the name of Al Santariga. He's a gentleman I spoke to several times. He's got a lot of good information on a lot of topics. And before we get to him, I'd like to remind everyone this is the largest listener-supported radio. It's donation-run. It requires a lot of time, a lot of efforts to be put in to keep this station going and support host time, and it's not an easy task, and a lot of people work really hard to make it happen. If you go to freedomslips.com, along with the chat room, you'll find an area for donations. You'll also see an area where you can purchase a lovely seed pack and a survival guide. It's a whole survival kit. It's a bug-out kit. It comes with 34,000 plus non-GMO seeds. It comes with guides for cultivation, water irrigation, everything you'll need to sustain and repopulate yourself and fend through. Tonight is a good night. It's a 2-hour show, and we're going to be speaking with Al in just a moment. There's quite a few topics we're going to be trying to touch on, and we're going to have Dr. J joining us in the second hour coming in, and he'll tell us about how he had the opportunity this week to speak with Mr. Edgar Mitchell, and he'll tell us what the happenings were with that. And Al, are you there with us?
Hi, Joe. I'm here.
How are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure having you.
No problem, buddy.
So, Al, we were chit-chatting before the show, and you recently went out on an excursion, and you were out and about trying to find creatures of the night, and you had a lot going on, didn't you?
Yeah, we went out on the Appalachian Trail here in New York, where there were a couple of Bigfoot sightings over the summer, and we went out and we did the trail back and forth, and we had a couple of incidences where we thought we were being watched. And there was one particular incident where we had a really bad odor that seemed to follow us. And I believe we were actually followed for about a quarter of a mile that night. Wow. Yeah.
And you said the most recent reports were this summer on the trail?
Yeah, there was a couple of hunters that I know personally who ran across them at night. They were coon hunting, and the first time they ran across it, they were coming around a bend, and they had rocks thrown at them, and they really didn't know what was going on, and they thought it was just like another guy in the woods messing with them.
Right.
And they told the guy, said, listen, we have our dogs. If you don't knock it off, we're going to send the dogs after you. And more rocks came flying towards him, and he sent the dogs in after the guy, and the dogs just turned around and ran back to the two hunters. They were scared to death. So the hunters didn't really know what was going on. So one of them took a shot at the tree where he thought this guy was hiding behind, and then outstepped this 9-foot, 1,000-pound Sasquatch.
Wow.
It just screamed at the top of its lungs, and they all took off running. And about a month or so later, one of the guys went back in on his own and got to around to that same bend in the trail, and a rock came flying at him again. And this time he kind of knew it was out there, so he didn't even bother. He just got the dog and turned around and went out. And that's why I chose that particular trail.
Now, Al, can you let everyone know out there, the Appalachian Trail is quite long. Can you let people know about, what part of the trail you were on, and then we'll get to, I know there is a long running history of activity of this sort right in that area.
Yeah, I'm in Dutchess County, New York, and the Appalachian Trail runs between here. It runs from Route 55 up to up north towards New Hampshire. But we were in the trail from Route 55 up to Nuclear Lake, which was a very famous lake in this area. And tends to be a lot of crazy things going on at Nuclear Lake. I spoke to a couple of the locals there, and they said every time that someone goes in there at night, they either see orbs or ghosts or UFOs or Bigfoot. So it's got a lot of history.
Is that the actual name of the lake?
Yeah, the Nuclear Lake is the actual
coincidental, name. Or how does this name come to be?
There was a facility there, I believe, in the 60s that the federal government had set up to do testing, and there was a nuclear spill into the lake.
Fantastic.
And that's how it got its name, yeah.
Right, that sounds about right. But now, Al, I know myself, although I'm not well versed on it, I know there is a good history of reports in that area that go back quite some time, and they all seem to be relatively correspondent with each other. Have you met other people that have known this to be like firsthand historically, where they've seen these for decades, perhaps?
Well, I've met a few people investigating this particular trail. And I also know that there's a part of the Appalachian Trail runs off into Pauling, New York. And I think that's where the BFRO did their investigating. And I know a person who travels that trail quite often. And she told me that she knows people who have seen Sasquatches on that part of the Appalachian Trail. It's a little further east of where I was. And I also spoke to a local businessman who owns a local store here. And he had seen them too, not on the Appalachian Trail, but up in, while he was hunting up in the Catskill Mountains in New York, the southern Catskills.
And I know there's parts of the Catskills where you might as well be in Alaska, because you could go around a couple of hillsides and you're gone. That could be quite thick, dense woods up in that area.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. The trail that we were on, I did a little Google search of it, and from the overhead view of where we were, you could just see how dense and big the woods were on that one little part of the trail that we were on. It's pretty big.
I was working on a house for an older gentleman one summer, and it was actually for a friend. We were enjoying it. It was a summer working in the Catskill Mountains for the month of August, and it had gotten so cold out of nowhere. Just this storm was rolling in, and I didn't even realize the Catskills had that high of an elevation. And this old guy, he said, there's only 2 seasons up here on these mountains. There's July and winter. I was like, yeah, that seems to be right, because it was late August, and I said, man, if it gets any colder, I wouldn't be shocked if the rain was turning to ice, because it got cold quick. That's incredible up in there. But you could be deep in those woods and not see a house for quite some time. It's a good place to be.
Dutchess County is the county where I live in. The immigrants, Dutch named it the Devil's Playground because of all the paranormal activity. Wow. And I was also told by Native Americans that when the Mohawk or Mohegan Indians would travel south from Canada down through New York, that they were so superstitious of the Catskill Mountains because of the way the fog would roll in every night, that they would plan their travels, that they would get through them in one day. They wouldn't even camp there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's a good history just up and down the Hudson River alone. So many different cultures have lived there, and it's a good river. It's a deep river. It feeds right into the Atlantic. Geographically, it's in a great location. A lot of woodlands, tons, even still today. Although obvious population from New York City is constantly growing. You still have quite a good area for a lot of things to be going on. Well, when did this all start for you, seeing Sasquatch in the woods in Dutchess County? When did this all begin?
I mean, it all started for me in 1974 when I was 12 years old. But that wasn't here. That was down in South Florida, in the Everglades, where my sister lived at the time.
Well, I was hoping we would get to that. You want to go there?
Yeah, why not? Let's go. Right?
Yeah, please. Yeah, great. Go for it, Al.
That's when it really started for me. My cousin Anthony and I were sent down to Florida every summer. It was like our camp. We would be sent down there to visit my sister and her husband Joe. And basically, Joe would have work for us in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we'd either go swimming in the pool or a man-made lake, or we'd take our dirt bikes out into the swamps and ride in the swamps. One particular summer in 1974, all hell broke loose. It started pretty mildly with a foul odor one night as we were sleeping, my cousin Anthony and I. And when I asked my sister about it, she said, "Oh yeah, that's the skunk ape. He comes around this time of the year when it's hot like this." And then the following evening, my cousin and I were sleeping in a pull-out bed in the sitting room, and we seen this massive shadow come across the picture window. And it stopped, and I must have looked at its own reflection, and it let out a blood-curdling scream that just sent us both, flying off the bed. And we ended up following it as it walked around the side of the house. My sister had sensor lights and a 6-foot fence around the house. And we followed it, and we were watching it through one of the bathroom windows. And it squatted down. It was 9 feet tall, 1,000 pounds. And it was dark brown. Would have had like red highlights you could see when the sensor lights are on it. It squatted down at one point. It squatted down, and it picked up a wild watermelon and just ate it in like 2 bites. Then it traveled north behind our house to the man-made lake, and it squatted down again, and it drank some water out of the man-made lake, and then it headed off into the swamps. And that's, we were beyond belief. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. We never, coming from New York City, we never seen anything like that. It was crazy.
So this thing, when it let out these screams, was it screaming at you guys?
No, I think it was screaming at its reflection. I thought maybe it thought that its reflection was another skunk ape, and that it was just trying to let him know it was his territory. I mean, it wasn't one of these whoops or things you hear like on the BFRO. It was a blood-curdling scream that just scared the living hell out of you.
Right. Now that this is, up to 1,000 pounds, we're talking a big animal.
Big animal.
1,000-pound animal of anything is a big animal.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And how did it move? Was it agile?
It just walked casually. It just had a nice pace to it. It wasn't, running. It just had a nice stride and just walked very smoothly and did what it wanted to do, It wasn't afraid.
Hey, Al, Joaquin in the chat room has a question for you.
Go ahead, Joaquin.
He wants to know, are the Bigfoot smaller in the south as opposed to the north? If so, what would cause that to happen?
Joaquin, I hear that a lot, but the one particular Bigfoot that I seen wasn't smaller. So, I mean, I only seen that one creature on a couple of occasions, and up close and personal, I haven't seen other creatures down there besides that one time. And that one guy was pretty damn big, to be honest with you.
But now you were saying the ones in Dutchess County could be up around that size and weight too.
Yeah, the one up in Dutchess County, the one that I got, the report that I got was about 9 feet tall, 1,000 pounds. But this guy seemed to be like jet black.
Yeah, this was like a different animal.
Yeah,
but
he was black. He didn't have that brown or red tint to him.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this story down in the Everglades for years. My mother lives down in the Fort Myers area, and I mean, you have panthers there as well. I mean, you have big elusive animals. That's density down in there.
When my sister lived down in South Florida in the Everglades, the town itself was called Davie, and it has a history of Sasquatch sightings going back to like 47. And, it was pretty swampy. There was all kinds of animals in those swamps. And, so we basically, we knew the swamps. We knew where we could go, where the ground was hard and where the ground was soft, and, what not to do when we were in there. And this guy was a big guy. I mean, I think we measured his footprint. It was about 18 inches long.
Wow.
And 8 inches wide.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty serious. Now, was that the only time, Al, you saw it down in Florida?
No. It just went on over a week-long period. Like the following night or a couple of nights later, it attacked a horse down the street. There was a horse rancher who lived down the street, and he had a horse, wild Mustang, that he couldn't put into the stable, so he had left them in the corral overnight. And this thing snuck up on this wild horse and actually grabbed it by its hind quarters.
Wow.
And I guess the horse kicked out, jumped the corral, and ran into the pasture, because when the rancher came out and heard all the commotion, he started shooting at the thing and called in the sheriff, the local sheriff there. Everybody came, and the whole neighborhood. It was like the neighborhood itself was like 4 square mile neighborhood. Each road was like a mile, and it was one big square. And we got there the next day. My sister actually ran into the rancher's wife at the local Winn-Dixie, and she told my sister what happened, and my sister came back and told us. We went to the rancher's ranch to see the horse, and the horse had fingerprints in his hind quarters. Wow. Not like scratches or nail prints, but like fingerprints. Like if you slapped somebody across their arm and you left a fingerprint mark,
right?
That's what the horse had in its hind quarters. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know how you sneak up on a wild Mustang. It's beyond me, but this thing did it.
Wow. I certainly wouldn't want to sneak up behind it. I know they can kick like something else.
Yeah.
My goodness. Man.
The following night after that, or a couple of nights later, there was a cattle rancher who lived up the block from us, and he had this giant bull. And I'm going to say, just off the top of my head, it was like 2 tons. It had a big hump in its neck and giant horns. And this thing actually ripped the bull's head off and threw the bull's head across the pasture. No.
Wow.
One night, my sister and her husband Joe were coming home from an outing in Miami, and all hell broke loose. And we heard the shots going off, everything. We jumped in my brother-in-law's car, and we raced up the street. And as we got there, sheriff was going one way and a deputy was going the other. We chose to follow the deputy, and we were maybe 10 feet behind the deputy's car when this creature ran out, and the deputy hit it, sent the creature flying over a stop sign, crushed the stop sign, and this thing got up. It was mad. Now we're sitting behind this deputy's car with our high beams on. We got a really good look at it, and it just limped over to this deputy's car and pounded the car. He was so mad, and it limped off into the swamps. And that's actually when the cattle rancher came over and told us what happened with his bull. And then we all went back to the rancher's farm, and we seen the torso bleeding out, and the head was on the other side of the pasture. And
wow.
Yeah, at that point, the local sheriff called in the state police, and they brought in horses and dogs and helicopters, and they searched the Everglades, but they never found anything. You know, once that thing gets into the swamp, it's gone.
Whatever happened with this report, Al? Was this ever a public case? Did this ever hit the news down there?
You know, I don't know if that particular report hit the news. I did some research on the Skunk Ape Museum down in Florida, and he had a lot of incidences in Davie and the local towns around Davie, but I don't think that particular story hit the news.
Now, there's down in that area too. I can't help but mention, or at least ask. There's a very long-running historical claims of lights in the sky down in that area as well, all around the Everglades, and have been for a long time. Did you ever see anything like that when you were down there, Al?
Now, I got to be brutally honest with you, Joe. I spent a lot of summers down there, me and my cousin Anthony, and we spent a lot of time at Daytona Beach. I mean, on the Fort Lauderdale Strip. I'm sorry, and Miami Beach. And no, I never seen any lights. No, not down there.
Yeah, I had to ask. I never asked you anything about lights in the sky down there.
Yeah,
because they're few and far between. But whenever I see reports coming from there, it's usually demographically in a similar area. So, Al,
go ahead.
What did this take you to after you saw this? Because this is really an incredible story. Because if you saw, I could only imagine how mad this thing was if it really went in. And do you think it went and ripped the head off the bull after the accident out of anger?
No. I think what happened was it may have been in the pasture, like hunting the cows, and the bull came up to protect the cow. And then they got into a little tussle, and the bull lost. And at that point, you know, you could hear a horrible cry come out of the pasture, and that's what sent the farmer out with the lights. He put on all the lights, and then you could hear the shotgun go off. He took a couple of shots at it, and you know, the whole neighborhood came to life. You know,
right. Did you get a chance to speak to anyone else, neighbors? You know, I mean, everyone must have been talking about this. I mean,
all the kids, all the local kids in the neighborhood. We used to hang out in those swamps at night and have bonfires and everything. And, wow. You know, we'd go in there during the day, and we'd even take, like the horses out from the ranches, the horse ranches farm, take them out on tours through the swamp and ride our dirt bikes through the swamp. But, once it got dark, no, we never went in there. But everybody, it was like old news to the locals down there. You know, it was no big deal.
Right, that always seems to be the case. I mean, they just don't have any fear of them.
They know about them their whole lives. You know, I mean, me and my cousin coming from New York, we never even heard of it. You know, except for maybe the Patterson film, and you know, we were kids.
Yeah.
So who was really paying attention? You know.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just shocks me that regardless of the creature, that local folks are really nonchalant about a 1,000-pound animal. It would just take, I guess I'd have to grow up with it, I suppose.
Well, they weren't hesitant of shooting at it. I mean, if they could, they would have killed it, you know?
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Right. It's just a matter of time. That's all I keep hearing lately. It's a lot of people saying that's the decision that they have to make. Is it better to do it alive or take it in dead? That's a tough call.
Leave it alone.
Right.
That's what I just leave it alone.
Wow. Because do you think that they're a threat to man?
No, I don't believe that at all. I mean, I'm sure they have individual personalities, but if I would have ran across one on my expedition, I didn't plan on running from it. I planned on just trying to make contact, you know?
Right. So that's what you want to do. You want contact.
Well, I mean, you know, I think they're an intelligent creature that, you know, is afraid of man because they know how dangerous man could be.
Yeah. And I think they that would make them quite clever because they're right. They are right.
Absolutely.
Every animal knows to run from us. Oh man. So Al, at what point did you relocate back to New York?
Oh, at the end of the summer, we were shipped back to New York to go back to school, and
It was just
went back on.
You were still. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, we were just down there on vacation, summer vacation. So at the end of the summer, we had to come back to New York to go back to school.
Gotcha. And I'm sure everyone knows the famous Florida coast in the summertime could be quite the ruckus, Al. It's legendary.
Yeah, it's legendary.
It goes on forever.
Yeah.
So Al, can you? How can I get you to introduce us to your experience with phenomenon of lights in the sky?
My UFO experiences?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that started when I was like 10 years old, to be honest with you. My brother was big into the paranormal, and, my father didn't believe in anything. And me and my best friend, we were 10 years old, and we're laying on my father's roof of his garage one night, just stargazing and listening to Led Zeppelin. And we seen some stars in the sky, like way up there, just dancing around. And it was pretty amazing. So I says to my buddy Richie, I said, "Hey, Rich, watch this." And I jumped off the garage. I got my father's crab lantern. He had this really big crab fishing light that he used to go crabbing with at night. And I just did like a little Morse code up into the sky. And next thing you know, one of them dropped down a couple of 1,000 feet, and it was like right into the flying lanes where all the planes would be flying. And then my friend Richie did a Morse code, and then it did the same code back. And wow. We just jumped off the garage roof and ran into the bedroom and didn't come out till morning because we were scared to death. We didn't know who we were playing with, That's how I got introduced to it. But I've had some pretty wild experiences. I've seen some pretty amazing stuff over my lifetime. And if you'd like, I'll tell you a few stories.
Let's do it. Okay.
In 1995, I was working at the post office, and me and a friend of mine, Kevin, were getting out late. It was in the wintertime, and it was dark. And we had just left the building, and we were the last two guys to leave. So we were hanging around the parking lot, just chatting. And Kev was a big believer in the UFO phenomenon, and seen a star in the sky, just flickering. And I said, "Hey, Kev, watch this. It's a UFO, and it's coming for us." Just joking around, not thinking it was anything. And Kev was like, "Ah, come on, don't even joke like that." So I went over to my car and I did a little Morse code kind of thing. And the next thing I know, this star that was so far away was 100 yards away from us across the field. And as we were watching this, we were in amazement. It dropped out 3 red balls, just out of the back of its hull or whatever. And these red balls fell down behind a tree line. And you could see through the trees because it was wintertime. There was no leaves on them. And they got about halfway down and they just went off, like they disappeared. And at that point, Kevin and I just looked at each other. We couldn't believe what we seen. We were in awe. And something told me to look up. And when I looked up, there above our heads, maybe 50 feet, 60 feet above our heads, was this triangle-shaped craft. And it was, it didn't have any lights on. It would look metallic. And it was just sitting there above us, not making any noise, not making any wind, not doing anything, just sitting there looking at us. And, we were looking at it, and then it turned as though it was on its axis, and it just glided back across the field to where it dropped out the red balls. And if you would have took your eyes off it, or if you would have blinked, you would have lost it in the night sky because it was pretty well camouflaged. And
I'm sorry, Al, where was this location?
This was in Yonkers, New York.
Okay, in Yonkers. Okay.
Yeah, this was in North Yonkers. We were in North Yonkers, New York. at the time when this happened.
Heavily populated area.
Heavily populated city. Yes, absolutely. But we were in a industrial park, so it was pretty lonely at that point at night because all the other offices had been closed, and we were the last ones to leave. And that was one of my experiences. I mean, in 2004, my daughter and I were coming home from a martial arts class. Now at this point, I'm living up here in Dutchess County, and we're driving up Route 376, and we're headed north. And my daughter, who was about 10 years old at the time, says, "Hey, Dad, guess what?" And I go, What's the matter, Amanda? She says, "We're being followed by a UFO." So I started laughing, and I said, "I doubt very much it's a UFO. It's probably just a plane going to the airport because the local airport was in our direction, or a helicopter or something." And as we cruised along, we got to a point where we ended up going north and the light ended up going south. And I told her, I said, "See, nothing, it's just a plane." Then we got home 5 minutes later, and we pulled into the driveway. The sensor lights went off, so they kind of blinded me when we pulled into the driveway. But when my daughter jumped out of the car to run in the house, she started screaming hysterical. So I said, "Amanda, what's the matter?" And she said, "Look, Dad, above the house." And there was a triangle UFO above my house, sitting about, 50 feet above my roof of my house. So I said, "Go inside and get your mother." And she ran in, she got my wife and my son, Nicholas, and they came out. And my wife said, "What's going on?" I said, "Look up." She looked up. They both seen the UFO and went inside. And as I'm standing there, I'm watching this thing. Now I'm a little pissed off that this thing is over my house, to be honest with you. And it glided past me, and then it made a left-hand turn and glided up the street towards the woods where we have these power lines. And when it got to the power lines, it dropped out 3 little red balls, just like the one I seen 10 years before that. At that point, I ran in the house and I got my German Shepherd and a mag light, my cell phone, and I grabbed one samurai sword that I had hanging on the wall, and I went into the woods and I searched up and down those power lines for an hour while staying in contact with my wife on the cell phone. And I couldn't find any broken branches where anything came down, or any smoldering rocks, or any burnt leaves on the ground, or there wasn't anything wrong with the power lines. It was amazing that this was the same exact thing that happened 10 years earlier at the post office in Yonkers.
Was it do you think it was a very similar triangle in size, or in relative distance from?
Oh, it looked like the same exact thing, Joe. When I tell you, I mean, it was floated over my head, and it just glided. When I tell you, it just glided very smoothly and slowly, with no wind and no noise and no anything.
No lights at all.
Nope. The lights were off. I mean, if it had lights, they were off. And it just glided straight up the street. And, I was pretty upset by that, thinking that this thing was sitting over my house,
So what do you think these 3 red balls are that keep dropping out of there?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I've been told they're smaller craft that are searching for something, but I don't know. I honestly don't know what they are.
Man, I wish I did know, because there is for sure, a long-running history in the Hudson Valley area with UFOs, as you know, Al.
Oh yeah, Pine Bush is famous.
Oh my goodness, it's well documented. It's been spoken about by pretty much everybody. It was pretty. There was a similar report, a famous report similar in Triangle, right, Al? Wasn't there a famous one that came out
the
of
Hudson Valley Triangle?
Yeah, the Brewster, wasn't it the Brewster?
Yeah, that was in Brewster. I think that was in, I want to say 90 or 84. In 1984, I believe that was. Yeah, because in 1984, as a matter of fact, that you brought that up, I was going going home I was working in New York, in Yonkers at the time, but I was living in Connecticut in my brother's home, and he lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I was cruising home one night up the Taconic Park, not the Taconic, the Merritt Parkway, and just cruising along, and I started having difficulties with my car, started sputtering, and the radio was going in and out, and I was listening to the Yankee game. It was in July. And so I decided to get off the road because I didn't want to get rear-ended. I just bought this car. It was a brand new Mustang, and I wanted to get off the road. And when I got to this hill, top of this hill, I got off onto the grass, and I looked down because the car died. I looked down, and it was like 100 cars dead in the road in the parkway, right in the middle of the parkway, dead on the road. And I thought maybe that there was a motorcycle accident or something, and didn't even think to look up into the sky. I was looking down at all the cars, and I seen a state trooper down there. So I took a walk down to talk to the trooper, and I said, "What's going on?" And he just said, "Look up." And then there above our heads was a giant UFO. And the only way I could describe it is it looked like Giant Stadium, the old Giant Stadium, lit up at night, just turned upside down where the lights were on the bottom of it. And it was massive, Joe. It was like 12 stories high. It covered both ends of the parkway. It was just above the tree line, and the troopers were there, and it was 100 people just looking. But you know what was funny? There was a kind of peace among everybody. Nobody was in a mad panic or running around like a chicken without a head. Everybody was just kind of in awe of this thing, and it didn't make any noise, and it didn't make any wind, and then it just sat there, and I looked at the trooper, and I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" And he just looked at me and gave me a look. If looks could kill, I'd be dead. He goes, "The UFO, what do you think it is?" And then the thing just, like in a blink of an eye, it went up 1,000 feet. And when it did that, you could hear all the cars start up automatically, and the trooper's radio started to work. And he called in to his barracks, and he asked him to send out the Air National Guard from the Bridgeport Airport. And they sent out 2 jets from the Bridgeport Air National Guard. And he was talking to the pilots, and they said, "Yeah, we're like a minute out, and we don't see anything on our radar, and we don't see anything in front of us." And the trooper was like, "It's impossible because this thing is humongous." And in a blink of an eye, Joe, when I tell you it was as high as a star in the sky, it was gone. Just as those 2 jets came roaring down the parkway. And when those jets came down the parkway, the ground was shaking, the trees were bending, there was leaves and debris blowing everywhere. Everybody was running for their cars. We thought it was the end of the world when those 2 jets came by. But they never seen anything on their radar, and nothing was ever reported in the newspaper.
Now, all of these places all around the Dutchess County area, you're really not too far, the way the crow flies, specifically from the Indian Point power plant.
No, we're just east of the Indian Point power plant. Yeah, maybe.
Do you think there's any association with that and these lights?
Well, I know at one point that triangle craft did fly over the Indian Point power plant, and I believe a security guard took a shot at it, but nothing ever happened from that. So, I mean, I don't know. I didn't see that particular craft. Yeah. I seen this round one that was humongous.
I just know you saw them in Yonkers, which is south of the plant.
Right.
Dutchess County, north. Connecticut,
east. Which is east. Yeah.
And Pine Bush is west.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Pine Bush is historic. And I recently read some articles that in the late 80s, I think it was 1987, there were plans for the possible development of a superconductor super collider to be built there.
Pine Bush?
Yeah, surrounding Pine Bush. Like it was a 25-mile track, like an oval, like a racetrack. And Pine Bush would have been within the center of it. It would have been surrounded, but would have been way underground. It was It was a proposal from New York State to the Department of Energy, and it ended up going and being built in Texas. And of course, millions of dollars were spent, but the project was abandoned. And
I didn't hear.
We just built very expensive tunnels.
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't bet my bottom dollar that thing is not being used. If you know what I mean.
It happens, but you know, it's there's no coincidence to me that there was or is something really going on around in that area, because it's just continuous, and I understand why a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but you know, these things have been going on a long time, and that power plant is there. I would just love to know what the guards there have seen over the years, because we got plenty of water there, a lot of mountains, old mountains at that, a lot of woods.
I have a friend, a personal, like my best friend growing up, who was a longshoreman who worked on the river, and he would get work whenever he worked the midnight shift. He would tell me the next day he would see like balls of light cruising up and down the river at night, and sometimes he'd see him go into the river, and sometimes he'd see him come out of the river, and they were always headed north towards the power plant. So I mean, you know, I didn't see for myself, but I believed him.
Of course, but that's not a rare claim. There's a question for you, Al, from a Noodles 101 in the chat room. How did you know nothing showed up for the jets on radar?
Because my brother at the time was listening to a radio show at the house, and the guy on the radio was actually got a phone call who told him that there was a UFO outside the building. And when he went up to the roof and he seen it, he was live on the radio and he was telling all his listeners what was going on. My brother later in life wrote a book called Frank R. Santariga. It's called Paranormal Family and Friends. Mm-hmm. And in the book, he investigated the case, and there was nothing ever written about. He couldn't find anything that was ever reported about any sighting over the Merritt Parkway. Even the radio station, when he contacted the radio stations for the tapes, because they were live and they recorded it, they said that they didn't have the tapes. So there was never anything ever published in the newspapers. My brother searched high and low, and he couldn't find anything about it. So, I mean, what I heard the pilot tell the trooper while I was standing next to the trooper is that he didn't have anything on radar and he didn't see anything in front of him. So I was standing right next to the pilot when he was talking to the trooper on the ground, because the trooper was telling him we're between these two exits, you know, and I happened to be standing right there.
Yeah.
That's how I knew.
And they have the airspace pretty well covered with, there's so much air traffic there, with a few smaller airports, but major New York airports, the Indian power plant where you can't fly anywhere near that thing.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the river from you have Stewart Airport, which then was probably just Stewart Airfield. It was probably just
an Air Force
military
base.
Still being used. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think they still have people there.
Oh, absolutely.
Some degree of National Guard. Yeah. But that airport's still growing. But these reports, with nothing coming on the radar in that area, go back decades. And from relevant people, I've heard them from police officers in the Hudson Valley. Said they've seen them, and it's just nothing comes up on them. And sometimes they blame it on how low they're flying in the hills from where the radars are. But regardless, it's quite interesting. You know, when these
it was. I'll be honest with you, Joe. It was a pretty clear night. It was around 7:30 at night, so there was still plenty of light out. And from where those planes were coming in, they should have been able to see it through their cockpit window. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they said they couldn't see it. You know, they couldn't see it on radar or in front of them. So I don't know why they couldn't see it, and the people on the ground seen it as clear as day. Beyond me.
Right. That is strange.
Yeah.
Do you think that some people are unable to see UFOs?
I don't know about that. I mean, if there's something in front of you, I think it's pretty obvious to see. I mean,
You know, Al, some people say that, yeah, some people suggest
okay.
that you have to be in a certain mind frame or a certain understanding to see certain things. And they even say the same thing. They suggest the same thing with Bigfoot, Al. You think that holds
Well,
any truth?
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
to you, is it plain and simple? You just see it or you don't?
Yeah, I'm a pretty cut and dry kind of guy. You know what I mean? It's either there or it's not. I don't know. I mean, I'm not that deep.
But you feel confident that do you feel confident that you're going to see one of these in Dutchess County again?
Joe, I've seen so many different kinds of crafts in Dutchess County over the last 20 years. I've seen stuff that look like V's. I've seen stuff that look like stadium lights. I've seen all kinds of stuff, and I wrote it all down in a book. I documented the date, the time, and where I was, and all that stuff. But it got to the point where there was so many of them that it was, ridiculous.
Because it's really not a good location for anyone to be testing any kind of aircraft. That really doesn't make any sense. It really is a populated area, even though there are woods. It's not a very good place to test anything. There's a lot of hills, lots of houses, lots of highways, lots of
Yeah,
cars.
it's country living, but it's very populated,
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Which brings me to my 2005 incident. In 2005, I had these terrible headaches, and I couldn't understand why. And I was going to the doctors, and they put me on every kind of medicine there was, and nothing worked. And so I ended up. They wanted to do a spinal tap, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to hold off on the spinal tap for a little while. My wife and I ended up taking the kids over to Bear Mountain State Park, and they had an Indian powwow over there that day. And we took the kids to the park, and as we were entering the park, I was pushing my son in a stroller or whatever, and a shaman steps out of his tent, and he says to me that I have a dark energy attached to my aura, and my aura needs to be cleansed. So I say, okay, how much is this going to cost me? And he says, I'll do it for free because your aura really needs to be cleansed. I said, okay, it's going to be free. Let's do it. So I go into this tent with this shaman, and I'm really not buying it, to be honest with you. And he starts, blowing some smoke on me. I guess it was sage or something, and dancing around, beating a drum and all this stuff. And the end of the ceremony, you hear him digging around in the back of the tent, like through rocks and stuff. He hands me a pouch with a stone inside it. And he says, this is a healing stone, and the stone will keep you safe. Just don't ever open it and don't ever touch the stone. Otherwise, it'll lose all its healing properties. So I said, okay. I walk out of the tent, and my migraines are gone. It's amazing. They're gone. Just as simple as that. That was in late September. That Halloween, we took the kids out trick-or-treating. My daughter was dressed as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, and my son was like a pirate. And we went trick-or-treating, and after we went to bed. I was laying in bed, sleeping, and I could see like a bright light out my window. And I said to myself, wow, the moon is really bright tonight. But it felt like I was having an outer body experience. I was actually out of my body above my bed looking down at me. And when I started to really look to see what was going on, I seen 3 tall gray aliens trying to like transport me out through the wall. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, how the hell are they going to get me out through the wall? It's October, the windows are closed, it's winter time. And I couldn't understand how they were going to get me outside. And I'm looking down at my German Shepherd. I got a 125-pound German Shepherd sleeping at the edge of the bed like a big baby. And I'm saying, why isn't this dog doing something? And all these crazy thoughts are going through my head. And then my daughter starts screaming at the top of her lungs. At that point, I'm back in my body. I'm in my bed. I'm jumping up. The dog is making a beeline towards the kid's room. I'm right behind the dog. My wife is behind me. We get to the kid's room, and my daughter's laying across my son, Nicholas, and she's holding him down, and she's screaming hysterically. And I said, Amanda, what's going on? And she said, Dad, Dorothy was just here, and Dorothy was trying to take Nicholas out the window to the light. And I go, what are you talking about? She said, Dorothy was here, and she tried to take Nicholas, and I fought her, and I wouldn't let her have him. And I couldn't understand, couldn't make any sense out of it. And I said, well, Dorothy's a good person, you know, not like the wicked witch of the West. Why would Dorothy take Nicholas? So long story short, we put the kids to bed, and we put the dog in bed with them. We went back to bed. The next morning, I asked my wife, I said, did that really happen last night? And she said, yeah, it was a pretty strange night, huh? So I remembered the pouch that the shaman had given me. So I ran up to the bedroom, and I pulled the pouch out, because I always kept it by the nightstand, and I opened it up just to see what this stone was. To my shock, and I sent you pictures of that stone, it looked like an elongated alien's head with a face on it.
It really is a strange-looking stone.
It's a strange-looking stone, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I seen it. I just was dumbfounded that
I've never seen anything like that before.
So I brought it to a gemologist to ask him what kind of stone it was, and it turns out that it's tiger's eye. Okay, and he said it's. So then I brought it to an Indian powwow, the next one I went to, and I asked them about it, and they told me that.
Al, we're gonna take a short break, Al.
Go ahead.
Then we'll come right back to this in a few minutes. Yeah, welcome back to Researchers on a Mission Radio. I'm your host, Joe Kiernan. And we have Mr. Al Santariga with us. And everyone out there, please let me remind you, this is the world's largest listener-supported radio. You could find your way to the website of freedomslips.com. And if you could possibly make a donation for the station to keep the guest airtime going, keep things running. Everything does cost a lot. It's not that simple. These guys work really hard to keep things going, and every little dollar helps. If everyone just every now and again just went in there and dropped $1 every time they listen, it would really go a long way. People really don't realize that. You could also find your way to the seed pack. I have to mention, for all you people out there, I'm telling you, you really might want this. It's good for camping. It's good for everything. It comes with over 34,000 seeds. It comes with everything you'll need for survival, and the seeds for recultivating, and information for irrigation and cultivation and survival. And we can't forget the Boy Scout manual that comes with that. So that'll really button up everything you need to. So please find your way over there and join the chat room. There's always a lot of interesting folks in there with a lot of interesting things to say, as well as tonight. Al, are you still with us, my friend?
Yeah, still here, Joe.
Oh, Al, my man, I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Al, I'm sorry to cut you off right there when we had to go to the break.
That's okay.
Can we get back to that story?
Yeah, so what I was saying is, when I took the stone to the gemologist, and he told me it was a tiger's eye, and then I brought it to a powwow in Beacon this summer. There was another Indian powwow there, and I spoke to the Indian, not shamans, they were medicine men, and they told me that the stone itself wasn't a stone that Native Americans use. It's more a stone that was used in the Far East, like in India. So I don't know how the shaman, who the shaman was, or how he was there and why he gave it to me, but that's what I was told from the Native Americans that I spoke to.
Right, and they just happened to be there during that event at Bear Mountain. No. This was a recent event. They have powwows every year up here, the Native Americans, and they hold them at different parks. And this one happened to be at the town of Beacon this year. Oh, okay.
So I had this stone, and I just wanted to know more about it. And I thought maybe I'd swing by and see if there was a shaman there who could explain it to me. And when I got there and I spoke to the Native Americans, they said, well, you know, the shamans are far and few between, from what I understand, Native Americans, but they're most of the tribes have medicine men. And the medicine men that I spoke to said that it was a very powerful stone, but not for Native Americans. They don't use the tiger's eye. So, I mean, go figure. I don't know.
Right. So it was Eastern Indian.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So who was the guy who gave me the stone? That's what I want to know.
Right. But he felt you needed it, though.
Yeah, and he was, I don't know who he was or where he came from.
Do you think, are you able to correlate a lot of these things that happen? Do you think that there's any special reason that you're able to see a lot of these things when other people can't? Is there anything that ties all of this together for you?
Well, I was told I belong to a UFO group, and I was told from one of the psychics there, because of my last name in Italian, in American means holy line, that may have something to do with the abduction or the trial abduction of me and my son. I don't know. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it, but I did know that my last name did mean holy line, but I really didn't think anything about it.
Hey Al, I don't mean to jump in here, but there's someone in the chat room named Frank who'd like to have me segue over to the photo with the ghost girl. Can we get over to that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear about this. Can you tell us the whole setting on this picture?
Yeah, in 1982, I was going to school for photography in Manhattan, the Center of Media Arts. And a friend of mine, parents had a cabin upstate in the Catskills. And we used to go up there all the time in the summer, like to go tubing in the rivers or use the lake. And in the winter, we'd always spend the weekends up there skiing and stuff. And every time we'd go up there, we'd always pass this old burnt down hotel. And so one night I said to my friends, we should do we're all into the paranormal. And I said, we should do a night investigation, we should find out the backstory on this hotel. So we started hanging out in the bars and stuff up in the Catskills, and we talked to a couple of locals, and they told us that it was a real fancy place back in the 50s, but there was a tragic fire and a lot of people died. And, and then the local kid said, don't go in there because it's haunted and all of this. So, of course, me being a photographer and my friends just being curious, we decided we're going to do a night investigation. And we head over there one night, and, I got a couple of cameras and the audio recorder, and my other friends got a video camera. And as we get there, as we roll up on the place, I got this horrible feeling, a feeling of dread, just sadness, And I was like, you know what, guys, maybe we shouldn't do this. I got a bad vibe. Let's not do this, This is wrong. And my friends were like, no, you're the one who suggested it. Now we're going to do it, So I was like, fine, let's do it. And I actually stepped inside the hotel, and something told me to look to my right. And I aimed my camera up the steps, and there was a stairway to my right that went up, and then a hallway that went across. And I took a picture. And at that point, I just felt this dread was just so heavy that I just couldn't stay in this place. And I turned to my friends, Harry and Eddie, and I said, you guys take the cameras. You guys stay in here. I'm going to go wait in the car. I can't be in this place, man. It's just not right. And they stayed in all night. And then the following Monday back at school, I was developing the photos. And there was a lot of orbs and plasma and crazy stuff in the pictures. They took a ton of pictures. But that one picture that I took, there was a little girl, like a 7-year-old girl in a nightgown with her arms stretched out and this just screaming, like she was screaming for help. Like she was caught up on that stairway, and there was fire all around her or something. And that was just heartbreaking for me when I seen that photo. And I couldn't sleep at night, just knowing that I had that photo and that negative. And eventually, I went back up to the hotel with my friends, and we headed back up there for a weekend, and I made them stop. And we buried it. I put the photo and the negative in the ground, in the shoebox, and I said a prayer, and I burnt there all to ashes, and I buried the ashes, and I put a little cross up there, and I never went back. And after that, I didn't have any more like bad dreams, just seeing that kid in my head anymore. And that was pretty crazy stuff. You know what I mean? It was pretty heavy.
Did it stop? Did you stop seeing the child?
Yeah, I stopped once I did that, I didn't see her anymore. When I closed my eyes every night, it was like for a week. Every night I closed my eyes, and all I could see was that picture burnt into my brain.
Right.
And,
right. It really affected you that deep.
Yeah, it was pretty. I think that was the heaviness I felt when we got there. I don't know, but we never went back. That was the end of that.
So do you really think that you were there was empathy involved? Were you able to feel this negative energy? Well, I'm not negative. I'm like it weighed on you, right?
Yeah, it weighed on me.
You clearly felt it.
Oh yeah, it was just a heaviness of sadness on me. Just depressing kind of energy, very sad.
Did you ever have any of these feelings like that if you were seeing anything in the woods or in the sky? Did you ever have that feeling before with this stuff?
When I see something in the sky or in the woods, I do get feelings. I call them vibes. I get vibes, you know what I mean? And that's what I call them. And if I see something in the sky and I could look at it and I'll know right away if it's a plane or whatever. And I know right away if it's not a plane. I just get a vibe, Right. And that's the same kind of vibe I had in the woods when we were on our expedition, when I had the feeling that something was watching us and something was following us. I mean, we couldn't see anything. We only had like 4% of the moon that night. It was pitch black. I had my night vision gear, but the woods was still pretty thick. We couldn't see anything. It's just the feeling you get, I don't know.
The other people in your area, several other people that are interested in looking in the woods for going on Bigfoot outings. How many of these guys are there guys in that area that are on a constant search?
Not that I know of, no. I don't know anyone that actually is out there searching all the time. I mean, everybody's got to work for a living,
Right.
I mean, we're getting into hunting season up here, so there's a lot more people in the woods right now,
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Between bow and shotgun and stuff. So there's a lot of people out there right now.
I see a few questions that were coming here in the chat, but no, it was something else. I think we might be having a caller pretty soon now. We might.
That's whatever. It is what it is.
Right. Al, with that area there along the trail, from how far down have you gone the trail? Have you gone down the Appalachian Trail as far as Bear Mountain?
No, that's a long hike. No, I mean, just the part of the trail that we were on was a small part, and that was 4 miles that we did that night, each way, in and out. So it's a long hike.
Let's see here. Hello, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Well, hello, Polly Walnuts. How are you this evening?
Being blessed. I sure am. I've got a question for the great, glorious Mr. Al.
Hey, Paulie.
My question is, I was wondering if you felt like that girl that you took the ghost picture of, if she was trying to communicate a message. I get a strong feeling that's what she was trying to do, and I'm just curious to see if you thought that.
Good question, Paulie.
I don't know if she was trying to communicate a message. I honestly couldn't answer. I just think that her spirit was caught on those steps during the fire, and she was just looking for someone to help her and save her. That was the vibe I got. That's what I got, Paul.
When you were talking about her, sometimes I get weird feelings, and I had an image of her in my head, and it was kind of screwy. It was on the stairs on fire, and she was asking for help to get out of there. That's why I was asking if she had a message for you. I thought I was just going bonkers, because sometimes I think I'm going bonkers because I sense things and see things, but you know how that is. You know how it is too, the great Mr. Al. All right, I'll enjoy the rest of your show. Hey, it doesn't get no better than Research on a Mission on this station. Guys, this station can use all the donations they need, and that GMO seeds, y'all will not be able to buy non-GMO seeds very long. Hey, peace and love, guys.
Wow, peace and love, Paulie. Thanks.
Thank you, Paulie.
Bye-bye.
Always a blessing to have Paulie on. Always a blessing.
Yeah, Paulie's a good guy.
I wish he would call in every week. He just delivers just a quick dose of goodness.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he sure does. Yeah, he's got a good point though. That's a very very good question he asked, Al. Because it's possible that it's just something you haven't focused on or you weren't aware of. It's quite possible that a message is being delivered.
I don't know what kind of message would be delivered though.
I know.
I'm not a psychic or anything like that. I honestly wouldn't know if she was trying to send me a message,
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you're talking about. And sometimes people understand things. And sometimes there's no message given. The lights I've seen, Al, it's the same answer I've given with the lights I've seen in the sky. If there's a message given, I missed it. I must have missed it. Because I thought I was paying attention. That's what you're told. You just really just pay close attention, and it's just very interesting lights. But
Joe, I'll be honest with you, I'm a really simple kind of guy. I just get up, I go to work, I do my job, I come home, I take care of my family. I really, this was the first expedition that I've ever done, and other than that, I don't really go looking for stuff. I mean, when I did a little bit when I was younger, as far as like the ghost stuff, but that's more my brother's field. He likes to do that stuff. Mm-hmm. Things just seem to find me,
Yeah. Well, you're lucky you had an older brother who was well versed on paranormal across the board when you were still young. That must have helped you with some understanding, because a lot of this stuff started happening to you when you were very young.
Yeah, I got to read a lot of good books like Chariots of the Gods and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I was privy to that when I was young, and I didn't find that till I was late teens, perhaps.
Yeah,
I came across that. Who knows what I would have been thinking about if I was 10 years old?
You would have been scared. Let me tell you, you would have ran into your bedroom just like I did and not come out when the sun came up.
But I remember reading books like Chariots of the God when they came around and said, well, now so many things I had questions for are really coming to fruition here. It didn't explain everything, but it sure helped the thought process a lot.
Absolutely.
It really does give you an understanding, at least that something else is going on. And more importantly, you just pay attention. And you might really learn something yourself. It's all out there. It's all out there.
It's out there. Yeah, it's out there. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, there's something going on. And I'm certain you've seen something in that area. It's just continuous. So many things in that area, whether it's discussed or not. I mean, that area of New York, it's as far back as you go. There's even the Native American lore around there.
Oh, yeah.
I always had very interesting stories, and they've been in that area for a very long time. And I know they were even respected and appreciated by Hudson when he was going up through there. And that was a time when they usually went in there to clear the tribes beforehand. And I know they weren't messing around with those Indians, although they stole Manhattan. That wasn't a very good deal.
Not for the Indians.
No, that was a simple cash deal, I believe. $8. Yeah. $8 and some clothing, perhaps. Now, Al, when was the last time that you saw something in the sky in New York? Was it in the 90s?
No, I've seen something. Actually, I've seen this thing that I like to call the red craft. It's kind of football shape, and it's
Okay.
all red. And I guess that people would call it like a blimp, but I kind of reference the football. So it's all red, and it's got this little red light that blinks in the middle of it. And I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it up by my house. I've seen it down in Yonkers. I've seen it up and down the highway. And I've got out a few times to try to take a picture of it. And every time I take the digital camera out, the batteries always read dead. And even if I open up a new pack and I put them in, and you put them in and the batteries are green, and then you hit the button, it turns red, and I can't seem to get a picture of it. I can't whatever this thing is doing, it just won't let me get a picture of it. But I've seen that as recent as, July.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen it a lot. Yeah, this red craft.
How often would you say that you see this red craft?
I've seen it at least a half a dozen times over the course of a year.
Oh, Al, we have someone joining us here. Hello, Frank, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Hello, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for calling in.
Hey, hi, Joe. Hey, I just wanted to just make a little comment on what Al was saying about that little girl that he took the picture of at the
yes, please.
At the hotel.
Of course, please do.
Yeah, I just like other people to realize that, like, I think it was Paulie Walnuts who Paulie had mentioned that she was calling out to him, and I believe also that the little girl was calling out to him for a little help for her to passing on to the other side. I think if Al would have called me, I would have probably told him what to do. If anyone runs into that kind of a situation where there's someone trying to call for help that way, some kind of an entity or ghost or haunting, they should try to get either a medium, a psychic medium, or someone to help them cross over. I just felt so bad that when he told me that after he took the photo, he went and he didn't know what to do. He went back up there and he buried it.
Yeah.
I just, it felt so bad. It was like leaving someone there all alone again.
You felt that way about it, Frank?
I do. I feel that way. I mean, a lot of the people I speak to, I get the same sense that these people are looking for help, a little help to cross over, or for something just to get them going. And whatever help people can do to get them over is, that's what we want to do, get them to the other side. That was my feeling, and I just wanted to let people know that if they run into a situation like that, get in touch with a reliable medium, psychic medium, or even some religious people, or someone from a religious background.
Someone to handle it with care.
Yes.
Now, do you think burying it and getting rid of the photograph? Do you think that still kept the spirit in limbo per se?
Yeah, I do. They didn't do anything for the spirit.
I disagree with you, Frank. I think the spirit crossed over. That's my opinion.
Well, if no way you can test it, you go up there and you get that feeling. You will get that feeling if she crossed over. You'll get that feeling. You'll sense that there's something no longer there.
Well, I kind of got that sense because I wasn't seeing her anymore in my dreams.
Well, okay, that's possible too. I don't know. Maybe she did, but I'm just saying to other people, don't abandon the thing like that. Just let's try to get these people crossed over. That's my feeling.
And Frank, can you let people know out there that you are, speaking of a man of experience, can you let people know where they could find your information that you do deal with this? Again,
I have my book out there. It's called Paranormal Family and Friends, and I'm willing to help anyone. I mean, now that I live here in Michigan, I no longer live in New York area or in Connecticut. I still do get calls and emails for people to help, but they can get me at the frsantariga@yahoo.com. But again, if there should be local people too to help, but if they can't, give me a call.
Well, Frank, if you don't mind, do you mind if I ask you a couple questions since I have you here too?
Sure, go ahead.
Al, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because you know something about the topic that we were just discussing on particularly the UFOs in the Hudson Valley.
Right.
And can you just let everyone know out there that Al isn't being the first one here to make the claim in this topic? This is still something that the reports still kind of continue. I don't really know if they've changed much in the descriptions or if they've been less active, but can you just corroborate and tell us a few of the stories you've heard in your time?
Well, I pretty much Al covered the ones that I'm really familiar with, his stories, and especially the ones that he saw in Connecticut. Now I noticed something in the chat room when the people were saying how did the pilots have communication with the troopers? What had happened is the pilots get transferred into the frequency that the trooper uses. That's how they were communicating back and forth on their radio frequencies. And as far as one point, though, I'd like to make clear that those, I don't know if Al mentioned it because I got on the chat line a little later, that those pilots got there in about a minute after the trooper had called in. Was it about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about a minute after the trooper called in. Now, how could they get from Massachusetts all the way to Fairfield, Connecticut, which is it's about maybe 90 miles? They have to scramble 2 jets, get there in less than a minute.
Right.
My feeling was that they had this thing on radar all the time, and they were approaching it at that time. They were coming to it when they saw it.
Right, because that reaction time would be incredible.
Right, yeah. It'd be incredible is right. It is right. You're right.
Because I can't think of anywhere. I mean, that time just doesn't work. But even if it were, there's nowhere in that area where they have jets sitting there ready to go.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. They had A-10s, National Guard, like the Air National Guard at Bridgeport Airport in Bridgeport, but there were A-10s, and I don't think there were A-10s that Al saw. I think they were either F-15s or F-16s. I don't remember what they were. But they definitely weren't there, and they were from Massachusetts. The flight was from Massachusetts.
Wow.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to let people know is that same night that Al saw the UFO in Connecticut was the night that the triangle was over the Indian Point power plant.
That was the same night?
The same night.
No
now,
kidding.
If you ever read Phil Imbrogno's book, Night Siege,
yes,
he goes deep into that and tells you it's the same exact night that they saw that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But these were two totally different type of objects. One was a triangle type, the one over Indian Point, and Al's was more of a less circular, type, normal like flying saucer type.
But ultimately, that's really not that far away.
No. What are we talking about? 20 miles, probably.
Yeah.
From there to that, yeah. I mean, nothing's saying that it doesn't change, shape. You never know. I don't know. It could be.
Well, it's an interesting area, and as I was mentioning to Al, he's seeing a lot of things around in that area, and I know there's a lot of people in that Buchanan area, right there along the river, right through Peekskill, that have been saying they see things right outside that plant, pretty much on the surface of the water sometimes at night that they know they're not boats.
Right.
And I've been hearing that for 20 years now.
Yeah, I mean, that area is very, very hot. It's a big hotbed. Now, I noticed there's a couple of people from Pine Bush that are on the chat room also. Now, if you draw a line directly from Pine Bush going east across the Hudson River into Dutchess County, you'll see it goes into the areas where they have those stone chambers. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
No, what stone chambers?
Well, there's a series of stone chambers along the. Al, help me out here. You know better than I do about this.
One is the King's Chamber in Stock Park, and then there's the Ninum Mountain Chambers in Ninum Mountain in Mayapack.
Right. Yeah.
I'm unfamiliar. We have another caller here with us, guys. Hello?
Yes, hi, Joe. It's Joaquin calling from New York City. What's up, Al?
Joaquin,
Hey,
how are you?
I'm good, hanging in there, fellas. Great show, by the way.
Thank you, Joaquin. Thanks for calling in.
Absolutely. I just have a quick question for Al. I wanted to know, Al, if you were familiar with those triangle UFOs being manufactured by Lockheed Martin, Lockheed Skunk Works, or the TR-3B Astra. Could it be possible that's a government-made craft that used for MELABs?
You know what, Joaquin? I'm not familiar with the Lockheed Martin making those crafts, but if they were man-made, then they're incredible because they didn't make any noise or blow any wind. I mean, they was 50 feet above me, and when it turned like it was on an axis, and it just glided away. There was no sense of any kind of energy source or propulsion system. It's amazing.
Not to cut you off, it suggested that they had actually two models. The first model is called the Black Manta, the TR-3A, and it was manufactured by Northrop Grumman, and the TR-3B Astra was manufactured by Lockheed Skunk Works, and that Ben Rich had a hand in making those, and that the TR-3B Astra was capable of teleportation, stealth, obviously, and it was responsible for the Belgium 1990, April 1st, 1990 UFO sighting. I'm not sure that it was responsible for that. So I don't know if you know about that.
I definitely didn't hear about the teleportation, but go ahead, Joaquin. What do you want to get to?
Yeah, no, about Bigfoot. I wanted to know roughly, would you, how many are there? Like, how many would you assume are out there? In the thousands, in the hundreds? Less than that, 50?
If I had to take a guess, I would say in the thousands. If you think about all the sightings from Maine to California and then up through Canada, that's a lot of property, a lot of land for just one family to be wandering through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guys, Joaquin, I didn't mean to cut you off, but in the chat room, we got someone here, and this is a gentleman in Pine Bush who wants to know more on these stone chambers, and I have to be honest with you guys. I'm unfamiliar with these things too, and I thought I was pretty knowledgeable of the geography of the Hudson Valley.
Yeah, I've basically found out about them last year through the group that I belong to, the UFO Roundtable.
Okay.
They've gone up to these chambers and investigated them. Rosemary Ellen Guiley did a thing on them too. She wrote in her book. I seen something on one of those ghost channels that she was on. She showed a film of seeing like shadow people at these chambers. Okay. As a matter of fact, that's going to be my next expedition, the chambers.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, I'm hoping to be, not hoping, I will be in the Hudson Valley in just a few weeks from now. And I was hoping to look into something without having to go into the woods during hunting season.
If you want to go into the chambers, I think I don't know if you can hunt in Fawn Stock or in a mountain. I'm not really sure I know it's state land. I don't know if you can hunt there though.
Right.
Yeah, but if you go to Needham Park, you can. That's a regular park, so you can't hunt there. So if you go to those chambers, you should be fine.
Yeah.
Which one's Frank?
Hey, Al.
Yes.
Hey, Al, one last question, brother.
No, go ahead, Joaquin. Take your time.
I appreciate that, Joe.
No
when
worries.
when is it going to be the next little excursion you have going out there hunting for Bigfoot? Because I would like to be a part of that. I think I had maybe mentioned that to you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm not going back out there until the summertime. I want to be able to see the path that I'm on. You know what happened to me on the last expedition? That's not going to happen again.
I hear you. I appreciate you guys' time. I'm going to head back to the chat. Take it from there. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for taking my
No,
call.
thank you. Thank you.
All right, I was good talking to you, brother.
Good night,
Thank
brother.
you, Joaquin.
Later.
Hey Joe, I'm going to put out my email if anybody wants to get a hold of me.
Please do.
Because I see that Jay from I guess he's from Pine Hill. He wants a little bit more information on the stone chambers.
Yes, yes.
And he could email me, and I'll give him some information
Okay.
on those. Okay?
Yeah, I'm sure he would love to know all about it. If you could, Al, you could post any information right in the chat room if you'd like, or if you want to send it to me, I could post it or get it to him or whatever you want to do.
Joe, I don't have anything readily available. I'll get more for you and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
More info.
It's all good. Al, have you seen these stone chambers?
No, not personally. I've only seen them through pictures of from the group that I belong to, and I've seen them on TV when they were done. When they were actually did went there with Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Okay.
But I haven't seen them personally. I haven't been to them now.
Wow. I was curious as to the age of these things.
Oh, they date back. They say they date back past in 5000 BC.
Is that right,
That's what
Frank?
they say. I don't. This is what the book said.
Of course, of course, but I mean,
that's what they're claiming, that they've been there. They think it's some sort of like a druid type of something. I guess in the form of the what they had at Stonehenge, that type of.
Okay. Well, wasn't there? I know of some sort of a stone tower on the coast of Rhode Island. Is that what it is?
That's on Rhode Island. That one there.
Are we talking something similar?
Yes,
No.
but that one. Yeah, but that one they figured out is. I think that one's like only 3,000 or 2,000 years old, and they supposedly used that for the summer equinox.
Wow.
To see when the summer began. I guess the way it lines up. But yeah, that's supposed to be pretty old too. That's again part of these stone chamber type of things.
Well, I mean, civilizations were definitely here and functioning. I know for a fact, not far from me at all, just a short walk, I got my hands on a good report that was done just a decade ago on a geological survey, and they uncovered a whole site where Native Americans had been living, and it was a city structure where they had been living for thousands of years, and they said this was the center of commerce at this site.
Wow.
From 6,000 to 3,000 BC.
Incredible.
So I'm saying for 3,000 years, this was an active spot before the pyramids were supposedly put up. So that's incredible, and we really don't hear about these early civilizations here in the Americas. We don't even acknowledge them, really.
No, you're right. They don't. They don't.
No, they sure don't. I didn't even know they had any of these old structures in the Hudson Valley. I really didn't. I was always under the impression there was just before Hudson, there was just a few Indian tribes that were in tent structures, wigwams of some sort, the longhouses in that area, whatever their housing structure was. But I'm glad they still exist. It's such a beautiful area. It's no wonder 100 years ago everyone was building a castle in the area. There's some gorgeous castles right along that river.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
Yeah. Well, I know.
Like if I'll let Al get back to his child. I just wanted to get that thing out about the little girl, because that sort of touches the subject with me. I feel kind of it really breaks my heart to think that there's things out there that need to get put on, pass on to the next existence. And I just wanted to get that out to people, let them know if they ever come across something like that, try to get help for them.
Well, we appreciate it, Frank. We really do.
Right.
We appreciate your insight on it.
All right, Joe. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Good night, Frank.
Good night.
Good night. Al, I could tell you.
Go ahead.
Your brother seems certain. He it sounds like he has a gut feeling that there was unfinished business with that photograph.
I don't know. I mean, Joe, when my dreams went away, when I felt that she had passed over, She had to. Maybe you know, whatever I did got her over, and she's not there anymore. But I've never been back to that location again after that. So
that's true.
Honestly, I couldn't tell you one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. It's fair. I see it from both ways.
Yeah,
I do. You know, because if you feel good about it, you know, because initially you said you had felt the sorrow that, you know, you had felt so much that came with it, and if all that passed on you, it's a tough call.
It did. It passed. It really did. So I'm hoping by doing what I did, I thought I was doing the right thing. I passed her over, but you know, my brother, he knows more about this stuff than I do. I just seem to experience everything.
Yeah, well, you get to see it firsthand, and he speaks to a lot of people, and you know, we're all just trying to make sense of it all. The answer's got to lie somewhere in the middle between everything, and you know, everyone's trying to do their part. And, you know, there's a lot of people out that experience a lot of things, and they never speak up about it. They don't. Or there's so many people that I even hear of where they're 40 years old, or, you know, mid 40s or 50 years old. And so often they say, this is the first time I've ever spoke of it. And they start telling a story that's almost 30 years old. So that's incredible. And they recall every detail and how profound it was. And it was life-changing. And so you really didn't tell anyone for 30 years? You say, wow, you know, and it happens all the time. So how have you been dealing with it? You know, it's amazing.
Yeah, well, you know, life has a way of making you deal with things.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
Hopefully preparation is in there. You know, if everything has a message, it's got to be hidden.
I don't know about that. I don't think everything has to be hidden. I think some of the messages are loud and clear.
I wish you could tell me about some good messages, Al.
Well, when you come up for next time you're up here, we'll bring your cameras and we'll head to the chambers.
I told you I'm bringing everything. Bringing everything. I'm bringing night vision.
We're going in during the day. We don't need no more night excursions for me.
We'll see. We'll see. I'll try to drag you deep into the woods, and by the time we get back, it'll be dark.
Let me know when you're coming, because I'd like to do a dry run, so we know where we're going when you come up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll be up there in the middle of November, and then if you really do want to plan something for the spring or summer for next year, really doing something, I'll be in on that with you. And if we want to pick out a solid date months ahead, and have people like Joaquin who are interested, and anyone else,
absolutely.
I would commit to that if you picked up a good date.
Okay, we'll look into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's. How many people went out with you this time?
8. We went out with 8 people. Yeah, but I like to cut that number in half, to be honest with you. There was a lot of noise, and it was hard. It was first time for everybody, and everybody was really excited. And when you got 2 people to be quiet, 2 other people would start talking. And it was a really warm night. People were afraid to sit down because they were afraid of snakes. And once the coyotes showed up, it just rattled everybody. So,
yeah,
that'll
do it.
Yeah, especially city people. They're not used to, you know, all that nature.
Trees and stuff.
Snakes, bears, mountain lions, coyotes. You know, I try to explain to everybody these are things that we could run across while we're out there in the middle of the night, because they're all predators. And, you know, but I guess nobody took me serious. And then when the coyotes showed up, people got scared.
Yeah, I could see them frightening off pretty quick too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the area there was hilly, a lot of slopes.
It was deep woods. Yeah. It was a lot of deep hollers and a lot of high bluffs. And yeah, it was pretty treacherous, to be honest with you.
You know, that's what a lot of people do forget is that Appalachian Trail. Even going through there, they think it's relatively fair because of its closeness to New York. But you know, that's a pretty rough trail.
It's not much of a trail, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's more of a goat trail.
Yeah, it is rough, and
Yeah, it's rough.
it's all granite rocks through there. Nothing's easy. But do you know of, are there any mines in that area? Any old iron ore mines or anything like that that you know of?
I believe they are. There are a few in Pauling, I think, or Patterson that
Okay.
I have heard of, but we're not allowed to go there because it's government property, and they have it fenced off.
Hey, Al, we
Actually,
have another caller here from 828 area code. Hello, caller, are you with us?
Hey, my name is Karen from the chat room, and
Hello, Karen from the chat room.
hi. I live in western North Carolina, in the Smoky Mountains, and there's a petroglyph near me called Judicolor Rock that is a pre-Cherokee rock that they think may be as old as 10,000 years old. That the Cherokee have legends about it, but they didn't create it.
Wow.
And it's really, really cool. And it's actually on private property, but the owner of the property has let the county come in and do excavation and build like a platform around it. And it's got all these like strange, I don't know, like look like octopuses figures and just squiggles and all kinds of stuff.
Do you know how to spell this name?
Pardon? It's Judicolor Rock, Judaculla Rock.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've never heard of that before either. So you see, thank you for calling and telling us that, because who knows how many other things are out there like that.
I'll post an image I'll post it in the chat room.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Well, enjoying your show.
Well, thank you so much, Karen.
Sure. Okay.
Right,
Bye-bye.
Wow, see that, Al? That's incredible.
Amazing. Yeah,
see, I
amazing
just learned
stuff.
about two incredibly old things that I had no idea about. You know,
Learn something new every day, Joe.
You're not kidding. You know, today I was going through old newspapers looking for something specific, Al. And you might like this one. I got a little story. This is a newspaper I'm going to put a link to it into the chat room. And this newspaper is from 1865, October 30th. And this gentleman says that something had come in. It kind of sounded something like a rocket or a meteor, something like that. But this guy tells this whole story to the newspaper in 1860, and he says he was camping, sleeping in a tent while he was traveling from one place to another. And in the morning, when he woke up, there was a giant, long, 2-mile-long path cut through the woods, and the fields had been plowed up and he found what appeared to be a giant stone that fell out of the sky with Egyptian hieroglyphs on it.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was from the Cincinnati newspaper.
Is that where it happened, Cincinnati?
You know, it doesn't say exactly where in this article, but it just says in the Rocky Mountains. He was out near the Rocky Mountains, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if Colorado was a state at that time.
Okay.
So it might have just been the West. And I don't know when we acquired those states.
Yeah, I mean, either do
West of the Mississippi. I'm kind of rough on that.
Yeah, me too.
But, you know, and I said, you know, if this is true, even if part of it was true, even if the guy just happened to find the stone, you know, there's just a lot of these old stones that turned up here that showed civilization was here. And, you know what's strange is a lot of times, Al, these old places still have these lights in the sky today.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of energy around those things, and it's special. It's those areas are special for a certain reason.
Because Karen, who had called in, where she was just mentioning, every now and again I speak to a gentleman out that way in the Smoky Mountains, and he tells me about all kinds of different lights over there, and then I know there's the Brown Mountain lights, which I I don't really think it's too far away. At least it's in the same chain of mountains, I believe. And they're notorious. There's been people writing and speaking about those lights forever. And same thing, just ancient areas.
You tend to find wherever any of these ancient chambers are, these stones are, you tend to find that there's usually ley lines that run through them, and B, there's a lot of UFO activity over them. So I know that's the case as for a fact at Pine Bush and these ancient chambers, the King's Chambers and the one in Needham Mountain.
Wow.
So
I wonder.
They mean something, you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I do. And, my personal opinion, and it really is just, it's more of an inquiry, is what are the lights looking for? If they are returning to these older areas, do they already know that there was something in there when they were here last, perhaps? Or is something today drawing their attention, when we see the lights? That's what I often think. Are they returning, or is something drawing them to that spot?
If you go, I was told if you go to Pine Bush and you bring a magnet, a compass, that the compass is off. The magnetic field is off. And I also was told from people that I know who've gone there with like EMF detectors and stuff like that. And,
right.
the energy level is through the roof, and it's standing out in the middle of a field. There shouldn't be any electric energy. There's no lines running overhead. And,
right. There's really nothing there.
No.
If you didn't even know what town you were in, you'd really say there's really nothing here. There's nothing there. It's simple. The Catskill Mountains or begin right after there per se.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
But ultimately it's just a few simple hills, but it's still overall it's relatively farmland still.
Yeah, it's mountainous region. It's woods. It really
but
is.
I still find it a large coincidence, though, during this time of high activity in that area of lights, that there was interest of putting a super collider underground there. It's just so coincidental to me that we were also interested in it.
I don't believe that's a coincidence at all.
Right. It just blows me away. Also considering that the public was generally unaware that, they weren't going to relocate anyone per se.
No.
They were going to just put this 20 miles or so underground, and if they didn't want to make a big stink about it. And, that's just incredible to me that there's so much interest in Pine Bush, from lights and from humans at that point. Just a very, very interesting thing. And, the document I had on it said scientists were in hopes of discovering the origins of the universe. That was for the Super Collider project in Pine Bush. I said that's so strange because there's people above ground looking for the origins of the universe as well. And there's lights there. And because there's scientists of all degrees then were in that area. Physicists who were apparently looking into these atomic level colliders, and so much filming was going on above ground in Pine Bush, and a few books have been written about it, and it still continues.
Still continues to this day.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah.
That's what I'm told. And Karen put in the chat room that the Brown Mountains weren't far from her either.
Right, yeah.
And, like I said, the guy who calls me every now and again, he's got a lot of incredible things to say about those lights. He really does.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I hope I could find the report, but not too long ago at all, maybe within the last 2 months, there was there was an article of a local news channel that broadcast something that from the Brown Mountain Lights, that a set of lights approached a car with a man and a woman in it, and this light crashed into the top of the vehicle. and it caused the back window to smash out, and it looked like the car had just been dropped on its roof. And I haven't heard of anything else on it since. Of course, I don't know if this is fact. I've just read an article that it had just happened, and it also said that the vehicle was the police had it in the impound. I guess they were looking it over. These are things I'd love to hear about if these things continue in local news, because so often they're not. When I talk to someone else and I say, hey, how does the news not air this? And they say, it's been on the local news 7 times here already. And you say, well, it's, that doesn't even make it out there.
No, never makes it out there. Yeah, local newspaper, maybe local cable news, but other than that, you'll never hear about it.
Yeah, and even in the Hudson Valley, there's one of the strangest things that I found, which not strange, it was shocking to me, was the amount of people in the Pine Bush area that were telling me while this big event was going on 25 years ago or so, and everyone was looking for these lights, really many people in the Pine Bush town really didn't even know about it at that time. It wasn't until much later. That's just how simple the town was.
Yes, absolutely.
And this, of course, was before the internet. So they had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you drove through Pine Bush today, you would say it's a rural town. So imagine it 25 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. There's nothing there now. It's a simple town. It really is a simple town. And you know what? Considering the Hudson Valley, though, I'll tell you, Pine Bush, one thing it does have going for it is it does have open fields. It does. You do have an area to view the sky. And I always tell a lot of people, they don't realize most of the places you are in the Hudson Valley, you could only see a very limited portion of the sky. There's a lot of trees. They're tall trees. And it's just a lot of dense overgrowth for the most part. And if you get out into an area like Pine Bush, you really can see a good distance.
Oh, absolutely.
You can.
Yeah, especially on a clear night, you could see forever up there.
Yeah, because you're at a decent elevation, but you have enough clearings. But there's people that were just putting out recent claims of white lights in the last 3 months. I was looking at it. These white lights that appear to just go up and down. It said it looked like they were almost traveling like a wave, where they had a peak and then a trough, and they were just like going up and down through the tree line, and they were off in a distance.